Hello there again. We continue with our video series dedicated to technical analysis concepts, and not only keep in mind that everything we will discuss here belongs or appears also in two articles explaining the concepts. But of course, when you put your mouth where the words are, then everything comes clearer. This time we will talk about Andrews Pitchfork, and Andrews Pitchfork is one of the most interesting trading tools that exist on all trading platforms. There is virtually no trading platform, be it one dedicated to the retail traders or one dedicated to professional ones, that doesn't incorporate the Andrews Pitchfork. And in this case, if you go on insert, it will always have a separate tab. It's not like you'll find it like a trend indicator or an oscillator. It has a separate tab like the Fibonacci and so on, but this is Andrews Pitchfork. And there's a whole controversy with the Andrews Pitchfork because it is based on 3 points, so-called pivot points. But anyways, 3 points. In plain English, you need to click on the screen 3 times before applying the 3 parallel lines that make this pitchfork. Let me show you. So if you select it, and if you look at this arrow here, you see a small number 1. And let's say we make a click here for number 1, then the next click will be the second one, and the next click will be the third one, and just like that, this is the Andrews Pitchfork. Again, 3 parallel lines. Now, the problem with the Andrews Pitchfork comes from where you project the these points, the so-called pivot points, these ones, because so this is 1, 2, and 3, because they will give, of course, the direction. They will give the direction of the overall pitchfork. And while the first one and the second one aren't that important, I mean, they are important, but they won't change the angle. It is very important where you place the third one. And the aim of this analysis is to show you how to use the Andrews Pitchfork in trading and what are the ins and outs of it. Let me show it to you. Let me delete these ones. For example, let's take the Andrews Pitchfork again. Typically, it is applied from the tops and bottoms of a previous move. For example, if you want to look to project future prices down on the right side of the screen, you go and start from the absolute low here. You go and check the let's say the first swing high, then the last swing low, and this is the Andrews Pitchfork showing the future move. But this is the simple interpretation, because if you put the third point, if you put it here, as you can see, the pitchfork changes the angle. Or if you put it in here, of course you cannot go back in time, but what I'm trying to say is that if you put it in here, it changes the angle as well. So the third point, the third pivot here is very important, and it gives the overall direction for future prices. Our example here is on the silver chart. This is the silver chart. In technical trading is called XAGUSD. This is on the daily time frame. So every candle, green and red, that you see here represent 1 day. And the idea is to see how to properly use the Andrews Pitchforks and how to interpret this market. So let's go and take in the pitchfork, and let's start for the previous swing. The previous swings again is here, and typically you start from the highest point, but it depends very much on what you trade with. For example, if you trade with the Elliott wave theory, then you shouldn't start with the first pivot, with the P0, as you will see in the articles. You shouldn't start from the absolute high or the absolute low. Instead, you should start from the end of the previous wave until the end of the next one, and therefore that may not coincide with the absolute low or with the absolute high. In this case, let's start with the absolute high. So this would be our first pivot, or P0, and the idea is to use the second pivot as long as or until the market breaks the series of higher, lower highs and lower lows, because the trend is characterized by a low and then makes a lower high, and then it goes and makes a lower low and then a lower high, lower low and lower high. So as long as this kind of series here still exists, you won't do anything because you don't have the place for the second pivot. If you don't believe me, then just check over the internet how to trade with Andrews Pitchfork, and you see that there is a whole controversy on where and how to place the pivot points in the pitchfork. So you simply wait for this series to be broken, and we see that here we have a lower low followed by a lower highs. The market makes a lower low again, but here this gets to be broken. It gives us the entry or the place for P1 or the second pivot. And now it is time to see when the third one, where to place the third one. If we place the third one here, this is one way to project the pitchfork. But as you can see, the market doesn't respect that rule that we just said a bit earlier, because it goes, makes another low, another high, and then breaks that series. Therefore, can we put it on the previous one here? Of course we can, as this would be the best place for the third pivot, using this time the definition of a rising trend. You have a high, and then market goes a higher low, makes a higher high, and then here it breaks that rule. This makes the perfect place for the third pivot. And just like that, we've designed the pitchfork on the downside, and the pitchfork on the downside, in this case of this bearish trend, we know, or let's say the trading tool provides these levels from this moment on, actually from the moment that it makes a new low here. So from this moment on, we know how to place all the 3 points, P0, P1, and P2. Stay tuned now for the second part, where I'll explain the nature of the 3 lines and how to actually interpret them. Bye-bye.